Greetings, agents of change. Thank you for joining me today in the beautiful mountains of North Carolina. This will be my last live stream this year from my garden. The flowers are beautiful. The weather is amazing. I think it's 71 degrees. We have brought in our water toys. We're getting ready to go back to Florida. It is bittersweet, but it is time to get the kids back into school. But first of all, before I get into today's topic of the trap of traits, I have to disclose to you that big tech has definitely greatly reduced my viewership and censored my posts on leadership. So FYI, many of you that are seeking will have to find and look for my post. And it'll probably be helpful if there's certain ones that you really like or really resonate with or speak to you. If you share them, then and the videos that you like, then this will certainly help up it somewhat. But they are definitely censoring since I started the Authentic Leadership series. There is no doubt about it. But this is the reality of the world that we live in, and I have a solution, which I will be announcing in November next month. So now, without further ado, on to today's topic. Humanity is still trapped in a Greek leadership philosophy. I have labeled this the trap of traits. And I believe that one's leadership, that's the belief that one's leadership ability is based on traits. Hi, Dorian from Romania. I didn't know that's where you were from. I see you so much. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Those of you that are joining us, please, what country you're from. I love seeing the flags, and let us know where you are hailing from. So in other words, this trap of traits limits your ability to be a leader or an innovator or producer, for it's founded on the traits that you were born with. This includes your gender, your skin color, your facial features, and even your height. Now, this is a very oppressive spirit and mindset. Now, it's been in operation since the beginning of time, and it has been used to oppress others and thus to make oneself feel superior and have value. Now, if you recall, the Romans defeated the Greeks and adopted many of their ideas from their libraries. And this is what I consider one of their ideas, the illegitimate leadership philosophy that many have adopted even today in modern times. Now, the Romans, they made many races feel inferior, for in their mind, they were convinced somebody should be greater than others, and that was them. Now, interestingly, we have seen this again and again with the rise of the same spirit in operation. Look in Europe with Hitler. He believed the Aryan race was superior, and he therefore created a hierarchy of races. And if your physical traits weren't in the Aryan race, then you were dehumanized. In other words, you were disqualified as a human and treated like an animal. He sent 6 million people off to the concentration camps and believed it was for the different traits that they possessed. Now, believe it or not, this included the size of one's nose. Now, as you know, history tells us that World War II was ended in 1945. So hopefully we saw this spirit come to a squash with the dehumanizing of people, but it didn't. Again, we see that 3 years later, this very oppressive idea in 1948 with apartheid in South Africa, which was the separation and oppression of races for 46 years, from 1948 till 1994. And again, it was based on the color of your skin and your facial features. including the width of one's nose. Now again, a superiority complex, oppressing others based on nothing but physical traits. Now, as you are aware, Nelson Mandela was freed after 27 years of serving in prison for this fight, and he eventually helped negotiate the end of this oppressive spirit in 1994. But guess what? Guess what happened at another place on the planet in 1994? Rwanda. We see there was a genocide. The year it ended in South Africa in 1994 was the same year it started in Rwanda. How ironic is that? That in Germany it ended in 1943, and in a few years later, 3 years later, it happened in South Africa. And as soon as it ended there, then now we see it in Rwanda. And they had a genocide that lasted 100 days for the slaughtering of those who were all in the same race, all the skin color, same skin color, but they had different traits. And you know that what the major defining trait was that separated them into tribes and categories? Yes, the size of their nose. So we have seen this very same demonic idea or spirit rise up time and time again with the same oppressive spirit operating many different times throughout history. Ironically, it's the same basic trait that is the root of the problem: skin, color, and facial traits. And astonishing enough, through my research, why is the nose always involved? This is crazy. So this Greek idea is so dangerous and oppressive for many. And if this philosophy is not dealt with, then it will always continue to be an issue. Now, here in the United States, it is still a problem because it is not being addressed beyond the level of skin color traits. Now, we saw this with the riots that happened last year in 2020. We saw this in the 60s when Martin Luther King was for this cause. So we've seen the same spirit rise up in this oppressive, demonic spirit time and time again. But what I want to define now, exactly what is a trait, since I'm terming this the trap of traits. By definition, a trait is a genetically determined characteristic. Therefore, you have no choice in the traits you were born with. You have no choice the size of your nose. You have no choice your height. You have no choice your gender. You have no choice what color skin you were born with. But yet, this is the determining factors that they have been using since BC to determine one's leadership ability. How asinine is this? I'm doing my research, finding that the nose was one major discerning factor. And I'm like, this is the craziest thing, but yet it is so real, and it is affecting so many people's lives. Therefore, you and me were born with the genetic material that determines our physical traits. And this is a physical issue that has nothing to do with one's spirit, one's character, one's mentality, and thus equating to one's leadership ability. Now, however, on the flip side of that coin, it is vital to understand the purpose of such traits that you were born with, genetically born with. For they serve to enhance your purpose. And for those that do not understand this, they are defined by nothing more than their physical traits. That's all they have to go off of. So you do not get your identity from your physical traits. You do not get your value from your physical traits. The first thing that comes is not the color of your skin, but it's your eternal spirit that is created from an eternal God. Therefore, we should never primarily consider ourselves from our gender, our skin color, our physical traits, or ethnicity. We must consider ourselves primarily from a spirit perspective. You are an eternal spirit and an offspring of God. You see, spirits do not die. You cannot kill a spirit. You can kill a physical body. You can go to the we see a lot of cosmetic surgery. You can change the size of your nose. But your eternal spirit is where you get your identity and your value from, knowing who you are, why you are here. Therefore, I know exactly why I need to be a white woman in an earth suit. A white woman suit is what's needed to fulfill my purpose according to my assignment. But I do not get my identity from this. And this is where we are missing the mark, historically and globally right now. So my physical traits, my design, serves my function. But my identity and value are in my eternal Father, my Creator, who created me for a specific reason. So we must start seeing ourselves from this way. And then, and only then, can we see others this way. So Jesus said, you must love others and God to the same degree you love yourself. Now, this is important. Don't miss this. What he's saying is deep. You see, because we were all made in the same image. Our spirit man. We are made in the image of God, our eternal Father. And we come from the same image. So this is This is why it is impossible to say, according to Jesus, that we hate our brother and in the same breath say we love God. Impossible. Because God is in our brother. Because we are of the same spirit. We are all made in the same image. Now, because we are all from the same source, the eternal spirit of God. So your spirit is eternal and continues beyond death of your physical body or traits, your earth suit. That's why I don't say people are dead. I refer to them as transitioned. They transitioned. They are no longer here because their spirit is just in another location. Now, just this weekend, my son is 9, and we went on a family trip, and he asked about my mother's death, and we were in the car driving back. And we shared this experience, and I was reminded, because my husband, Matthew, we had just been married for 3 months, and we were there in my mother's room in hospice for 3 days when she passed. And I will never forget. It was the most surreal experience that I've ever witnessed. I remember they had her on morphine, so she wasn't talking, she wasn't responding, she wasn't moving. She looked like she weighed 50 pounds. She'd wasted away because of cancer. And at 10 o'clock at night, she took her last breath. And it was 3 breaths, and it was, and she exhaled because she wasn't breathing like that. And we looked at her, and she was gone. She was gone. I couldn't physically see her leave, but all of us in that room, we felt her spirit depart. You couldn't see it, but you sensed it. Your spirit my spirit sensed it. Matthew's spirit sensed it. My father's spirit sensed it. My sister's spirit sensed it. And it was unreal. And I looked at her body, and my first thought was, she's not there. I looked at her, and I remember thinking, she's not there. We heard the breaths, her exhale, and then I looked at her body, and I could tell she wasn't there. It was surreal. And fireworks started going off because it was the 4th of July. So it was fascinating experience, the transition that the spirit has. And you cannot kill a spirit. That is the essence of who we are. Now, remember, we are a spiritual being having an earthly experience, not the other way around. So therefore, my traits, my race, my gender, they do not define me. I know I'm a spirit being who landed here on earth from heaven in a female suit with this color skin for a specific reason. And these are the tools that I use to execute my purpose, but they don't define me. They are an important portion of my design and my function, but not the root of my identity. And until I understood my purpose, my traits were weakness. Now this is key. For most of my life, I considered it negative to be a woman here on earth. In many circles, I was considered inferior, less, or weak, weaker than the males. But now that I understood my purpose, and I understood how I function as a female with the power of influence, I love my traits, and I appreciate why God made me who I am, and I can leverage it for good. That's the key. But when people identify themselves by only their traits, then that's all you have, and that's all you will see, even in others. So then you have to protect it. That's what we're seeing with movements. They're protecting their physical traits, which they are considered their identity. So if people aren't conscious of their being a spirit being and they have eternal value from an eternal God, then all they have is their traits, which can be limiting and debilitating. So traits are given to us because of our different assignments. And I've had to learn that my identity is not even in my assignment either. And that was a tough one for me. But I do know it's what I function in. But there's more to you than your assignment. Remember, Jesus took 30 years to prepare for a 3-year assignment. So your identity truly is in God. We are eternal beings. Our purpose and assignment stops here on earth when we transition. So Jesus was clear who he was and what his assignment was. This is why he wasn't easily offended by the religious people. And what I have learned in this past decade is that when you become so secure in yourself, you don't take things so personally. You aren't so easily offended. And then you begin to appreciate other people's ignorance. That's what you learn when you understand who you are, why you are here, and truly where your identity is rooted. So nowadays, people think we aren't in sync or we're not progressive if we do not agree with their movement or their mentality. However, they are only limiting themselves to a physical body. But when you understand your identity, the rest falls into place. When somebody knows who they are, they will not oppress others. Unfortunately, most people we see are still trying to fight oppression from the wrong perspective. Now, the Romans, they felt good as long as they were oppressing others. That's where we have this thinking. If I have a nicer car than you, and you show everybody how nice your car is, you're posting pictures, then it makes you feel better than them. Then there's this feeling, I'm better than you. That's still a Greek thinking. If you see those, I'm faster than you, I'm faster than everybody. I have a bigger house than anyone, or I'm in the right neighborhood or the right zip code. It's an identity issue. When you don't know who you are, then you must get your identity from outside things. Brand clothes, purses, shoes, the list goes on. This is why many people's identity is from what they possess. They're still trying to wrestle with this idea. So this issue of greatness and superiority is the problem. However, I will remind you that the greatest leader who ever lived in the first century, he taught us that anyone who desired to be great, that they could. Because his mentees were arguing, who's the greatest of the mentees? He's like, he didn't rebuke them. He didn't say, shame on you for wanting to be great. No, because greatness is built into our DNA, because we are from a great God, the Alpha and Omega. But rather, he says, okay, you want to be great? I'll tell you how. You serve your gift to humanity. That's the formula. It's that simple. So what do you bring to the table of humanity? Your identity is secure in God, but your greatness is up to you. When you operate and serve your gift, your unique gift to your generation, this is what makes you great. But when we don't know who we are, we try to get our identity at the expense of others and from other things and other places, or our skin color, or our nose, or our height, or our good looks. But we must never use our traits to oppress others, but we must learn to appreciate others' traits. As Dr. Miles Monroe taught this to me, he said, you simply reduce everyone to a human. I asked him one time, we were in a head of state meeting in Curacao, and I was very intimidated by the prime minister. He was a large statue, a large presence, probably 6.5 foot, and I was very intimidated. And I asked him later in the plane, I said, how were you able to overcome not being intimidated? He said, Trista, you reduce everyone to a human. And that was his secret. So otherwise, we will continually dehumanize others by addressing each other with labels. That cancels them as a human. This is the same problem I witnessed with the gender confusion. They are adding genders all the time, mixing them up, canceling them out, gender neutral. There's so much confusion. They are trying to get their identity by labeling themselves based on their gender. And honestly, they're making it up as they go. But that's for another day. But to address the heart of this issue, this is nothing but the dehumanizing of others. You see, dehumanizing deals with their labels, which cancels them as a human. If you only identify somebody as, you are the prime minister, you are a wealthy woman, you are a poor man, you are a black man, you are a short man, you are, the list goes on. You have canceled them as a human, and this is the issue. So we must start humanizing humanity again. You see, every correction that has happened in history has occurred because one of these two things, the humanizing of others, which we saw trying to happen in the riots in 2020, or the dehumanizing of others, which we see when there's people oppressing other races. So we must learn. You simply reduce everyone to a human. And this, my friends, was the key to Dr. Monroe's success. He could enter any situation with the head of state and never feel intimidated. Likewise, he could talk to any man or woman without a title. And he showed value and respect to them all. Because he learned this vital, fundamental truth that you must reduce everyone to a human. And unless we understand this truth, we will never begin to heal as a nation, as a community, or as a human. So my friends, thank you for joining me today. And be sure to share this video if you think it struck a chord or others need to hear it. This world needs to hear the truth regarding humanity. And their identity is not in their labels. It is not in their traits. It is not in what they possess, but who they are. The spirits that they are, the eternal beings that they are. and then how greatness can be served to humanity. So may his kingdom come, may his will be done here on earth, just as it is in heaven. Thank you for joining me today. Take care, everybody. I'm sorry I wasn't able to read all the comments, but I see you're there. I'm going to hop on over to Instagram. I have 4 minutes left.